Angela Acosta, a New Jersey-based photographer. Welcome to Diana Prince Lives Next Door. Through my journey as a photographer and business owner, I have met so many remarkable women whose limitless contributions make this world a better place. The series is dedicated to them. I want to acknowledge their power and their beauty, and I want to shine a spotlight on daily heroism. Today's Diana Prince is Andrea Pass of Andrea Pass Public Relations. Andrea ensures that her customers get the media coverage they need, and she takes great pleasure in watching them expand their business and increase their profits through the work that she's done. Andrea is happily married to her husband of 35 years, and she is the proud mom of 2 adult children. Andrea, thanks for joining me today.
It's wonderful to be with you, Angela.
Well, today we're going to talk about life transitions. We're going to talk about the ones that we choose. And I know you mentioned that your greatest transition was launching Andrea Pass Public Relations. Is that right?
Exactly. I never realized I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was one of those things that I went into public relations, worked for a PR agency, someone else's name was on the door. And really the story of how I came to finally hanging my name on the door was the largest transition in my career.
And do you remember when that was sparked in you? Give me a little bit about your past and how did that start?
So basically, I started my career at the CBS radio division in New York City and realized that my boss, it was a 2-person PR department, she was never going to leave. In fact, she stayed until she retired, and she was only 2 years older than me. And so I knew I was not going to climb any ladder there, that I needed to leave. So I went on the agency side of things and started working at PR firms in New Jersey, and grew to be the head of media relations, the vice president, those kind of positions. But my name was never on the door. And I worked for a firm in New Jersey that I loved my clients and I loved my coworkers, but I had a bully boss. And I realized I had to make a move. But was that the right time for me to go out on my own? I realized it wasn't, because I was a bit broken and I needed a team. And I realized, okay, I need to be part of another company. It's not the right time. And so I joined a Los Angeles-based public relations firm. They set me up as their vice president of media relations, working remotely from New Jersey. It was wonderful. I worked with lovely people and had terrific clients. And the time came a few years later for me to finally make that move. It was the right time. I was in a good headspace. I was in a good place with lots of relations I had. And so I started Andrea Pass Public Relations, and within a few days had my first client, and within a few weeks had a full schedule of clients. And so it's been a wonderful experience to do what I do, which is securing press coverage for clients. And in public relations, there are so many aspects, but I needed to find my lane and focus on my expertise, which is press coverage. And so that's what I did. And that's what caused me to make that transition to being a solopreneur and loving every minute of it.
So the inspiration to become an entrepreneur came way before you worked for a bully boss. It had nothing to do with you were probably miserable working for that bully boss, as I can imagine, but it came way before him or her.
I don't know. I never thought of it. I always thought you worked for someone else. And I think that as you grow and as you age, you realize there are these opportunities that may not have presented themselves when you were younger. You hadn't thought about them because your traditional trajectory is, okay, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to climb the corporate ladder and someone else is going to write the paycheck. And I'm going to get my 2 or 3 weeks of vacation a year and my X number of sick days. And that's the way it's going to run. I realize, in my case, later in life, it doesn't have to run that way. You can run things yourself.
That's funny that you say that. It's a common theme that I've been hearing from a lot of women, and the fact that they start out and the common path is to get a job, to get a paycheck that's steady. And that's basically where most of us have been, I'm not going to say pushed to, but basically it's like it's the sole option. And so when you started Andrea Pass Public Relations, obviously going from a paycheck to being the boss, you're the only boss. Tell me about which part of that was your biggest transition. What did you have trouble grasping, mindset, whatever that may be?
Being alone.
Ah,
Being alone. And when you work for another company, you constantly have colleagues, coworkers, employees, that there is that dialogue all day long. You're talking to your clients, certainly, and in my case, talking to the press. But you have an idea and you're bouncing it off coworkers. You leave your office and you run down the hall and what do you think of this? Or you call your bunch of colleagues into your office and you have a discussion. Or when I worked for a company across the country, let's set up a go-to meeting and let's brainstorm. So there was always someone to have a call with and a discussion with. And suddenly you're in business for yourself and you're by yourself. And until you set up that base of colleagues you can trust and have that comfort level with, you don't have someone to turn to, like, what do you think of this? And that's when, after I started Andrea Pass Public Relations, I realized I really need to be out in the networking world. I need to meet other people like me, solopreneurs who want to have a support system, not just for an idea or business growth, but for education and camaraderie. And I think that truly helped me transition into growing my business because I met like-minded individuals of varying backgrounds. I remember I was at one event and sitting around the table were married people, moms, single people without children, people who were grandmas, people who didn't go to college, people who were high school dropouts, people who had their PhDs, a variety of people. But the similarity was we were all in business. And that brought us together. And that has been a real strong point in me forming and succeeding in Andrea Pass Public Relations, because I now have those relationships. And every day I meet someone new, and every day I learn something new. So I think that's part of business growth, is to learn something new every day, and for personal growth as well.
how did you find the connection, though? Tell me about that.
It's very interesting. When I first was starting my business, there was a person I knew from town, and I just trusted her. We were not friends by any means. We met through a mutual friend at a party years ago, but I knew she was just a smart woman. And so I called her up. I said, I'm going into business for myself. Can I take you out for a cup of coffee? Can I pick your brain? And we went out for coffee. And then she said, well, there's a few networking groups. You should look into them. Come with me. I'll drive you. We'll go to this meeting. So I go to a meeting of a networking group with her, and I started meeting other people and getting together with them. And then I started Googling and finding other groups to try out. And I think for me, the coming year is for me to determine what room do I belong in? Because even though I might have been in a group for a year, 2 years, 3 years, it may not be the right group for me. And it's hard to move on. And it's important to do so, though, for your own well-being and for the well-being of your business. And so I'm meeting these new people. And that one woman really got me started in this world of networking. And I'm always meeting new people. In fact, I run my own networking group, Access Success Networking. And I do this with a colleague that I met a number of years ago. And she and I come from extremely different backgrounds. I do public relations. She's a financial advisor. So we bring something different to the table, but all of these relationships really help you strengthen your business.
It does, absolutely. So so the community through a mutual friend, and the fact that you are looking for the space that you belong in, would that say that you have finally found that space? It's just, what.
It's a yes and no about finding the space you belong in, because it just takes time, and you could belong in a space for a certain amount of time, and then you realize I got to move on. That
Yes.
served its purpose in that time, and now you find a new group and a different group or a new person. And I'm going to a conference on the West Coast, a leadership conference, and I already have appointments to meet so many people I've met on Zoom at that conference. And we're all women business owners from all around the country. And it's such an exciting feeling to know I'm going to have this opportunity with them. And whether it leads to potential new business, or it leads to education, or it leads to strong relationships, each one of those things is a plus in my book.
It is. I fully agree. So let's go a little deeper. In your journey as an entrepreneur, what would you say was your greatest low so far?
My greatest low in my business had to have been just a period that I didn't have a lot of clients, and I probably had a lot of personal things going on at the same time. So in one breath, whereas it was a lull professionally, I needed the personal time to take care of health or family or things like that. So that was probably the low in my entrepreneurial experience. But as soon as you're going through the low, within a few weeks, things just seem to turn around, which cracks me up. I'm just in awe of people finding me years later. And a funny story, I had a woman.
Are you talking from your past clients?
No,
like when you...
a person from my past.
Oh,
So
wow.
a person from my past, 10 to 12 years ago, she was a journalist. She wrote a story about a client of mine. And of course, I remembered her. And she wrote me an email. She found me all these years later, 2 PR firms later. She found me and she said, I hope you remember me. And she included the link of the story she had written about the client, which of course I remembered her. And she says, I have a connection looking for a public relations professional, and I remembered you. And so now she is connecting me with this potential new business for me. And I'm already going into this with the endorsement of this journalist who remembered how helpful I was in getting the story written about my client. So you never know what's going to happen. And a referral or someone you meet and they realize, wait, I need PR. And quite honestly, I've gotten clients from people hearing me on podcasts. And it's always interesting when I get a phone call or an email. I heard you on such and such a podcast. Can we talk? I'm looking to hire someone to do public relations for my company, my product, my book, my nonprofit. So it's very exciting to see where Andrea Pass Public Relations has been and where I'm going.
That's wonderful. So my next question was going to be, what has been your greatest high so far? Is that it? Or is there more?
I think the high in creating and running Andrea Pass Public Relations is really the consistency of being happy. Because if you love what you do, you've never worked a day in your life. And I love waking up and knowing I'm going to be setting up an interview for a client, or we're conducting a pre-interview to see if the reporter will be interested in the topic, or I'm going to a networking event, or I'm running a networking event, or I'm a guest speaker discussing public relations and educating others as to what is PR and why do you need it. So every day is something different. So the high is almost the next day. What's next?
So would you say you're happier now? Would you say?
Oh my goodness gracious, Angela. I look back on the time that I worked for the Bully Boss. And like I said, loved my clients, loved my coworkers. But myself and the other vice president used to joke that we'd be super skinny if we lost weight crying, because we were crying all the time. I mean, every night, every morning, every weekend, because it was working for a bully. And now I wake up and I'm smiling and I'm happy and I'm getting the job done. And I'm meeting a colleague for a cup of coffee, or I'm taking a break and going out to lunch with my parents, or I'm working on something different that I never thought about before. And so every day is the high, because I love what I do and I find new ways to do it and new media outlets to introduce my clients to, and to have them covered in to help them grow their businesses using press coverage. So every day is a better day.
That's wonderful. I agree. I agree. So I want to segue into some fun questions just to get a little bit more in depth as to who is Andrea Pass. I'm sorry, I just have a cold. So what do you like to do on your time off when you're not placing the media coverage for your clients? What is your all-time greatest thing as you'd like to do? Well, what is it?
Well, my favorite thing is always spending any time with my children. They're adults and they don't live with us, so we're empty nesters. So that's always number one. When I get to see my son and my daughter, I'm always the happiest. But I love traveling. My husband and I are constantly planning trips. So we went to Alaska recently, which was phenomenal. We cruised the Caribbean. We're going to Europe in a year, down the Jersey Shore. So I love to travel. And that's my joy. That's my joy. Even a day trip, like I said, to the Jersey Shore, that makes me super happy. So I look forward to planning a trip, and I don't have a bucket list. I don't like that term. I don't like the term bucket list, but I do want to one day go on safari, and I'd like to go to Australia, and I'd like to go to Hawaii. And so there are so many places I'd like to go. I'd like to go to Savannah and Charleston. So whether it's in the country or out of the country, I'm looking forward to more travel as the years go on.
You want to experience new places.
Yeah, I don't need tangible things.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I'll look at these places selling this and selling that. It's like, do I really need anything? And I don't need a thing. I love an experience, and sharing that, whether it's me and my husband going, or going with other friends, or doing things with our children or other family members or friends. That's what's fun. That to me is so much more important.
Great. No, I completely agree with that one. So basically, you're on vacation and you need to pass some time. You may take a book with you, right?
I love
your all-time favorite book.
I have to tell you, I am a huge fan of historical fiction, huge fan. And Kristen Harmel is my go-to author. If you've ever read The Book of Lost Names, or The Winekeeper's Wife, or The Forest of Vanishing Stars, Kristen Harmel tells an amazing historical fiction story based on fact and research. And so she's one of my favorite authors. Linda Cohen-Leugman, another one of my favorite authors, who wrote The Two-Family House or The Wartime Sisters. Her most recent book is called The Matchmaker's Gift. And it touches on this story, the history almost of a family being matchmakers. So I love those kind of books. My book club has picked a few kind of suspense thrillers, which that's very interesting. And I always like a good biography type of book, a good nonfiction book. So I like a little of this, a little of that. I don't read any fantasy type of books. That doesn't interest me. But give me a good historical fiction or a good romance. For a beach, it's great when you could grab a romance type of book.
I will look up that particular author and see what she's got to offer, because I read often as well. So thank you for that. We're going to close out. And since our topic today is transitions, when we're looking let's say you have a woman out there, and it could have been me 5 years ago, and she's looking at taking the jump, taking the leap into a different lifestyle, into a different job, but she's afraid of the change. What advice would you give a woman who is on the precipice of a transition like that? What do you tell her that would make it a little easier or a little more encouraging for her to take that leap?
I think that you should first surround yourself with cheerleaders. So whether that's people that you already know out in the business world or meeting new people through networking, if you surround yourself with cheerleaders, that's going to help lift you up and get you off the ground so that you can start your business. But start a business in an area that you're good at. Don't the total opposite direction. I've been in public relations. I'm good at it. I secure press coverage. So it wouldn't have made sense for me to suddenly decide I'm going to learn how to be a financial planner. I'm not a numbers person. It wouldn't have worked for me. So find something that you love and that you're good at, but stick with it. It's going to take time. Not everyone's going to have a client day one. I was very fortunate when I started out that I had a client within a few days, and I had a few other clients very quickly because people knew me and they were waiting for me to go into business for myself. But take the time, ask questions, talk to people, and realize that failure is not an option. Everything that you might say is a failure is really a learning opportunity. And take those and then move on, and then move on, and then move on. And however you determine success, for some people, it's going to be money. For some people, it's going to be number of clients or winning an award. Whatever your way of success is, drop it a notch or two. Start slower. For me, success is having clients and doing what I do every day. That's what success is for me and for Andrea Pass Public Relations.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Andrea, for walking us through your journey. And it's been an inspirational story. I hope a lot of women listen in, and hopefully it inspires them to take that leap. And just for our audience right now, I'm going to put your website in the description on the video and on the podcast, so you can find your website there, and you can find Andrea. And I do encourage you to find her. She's a great human being and definitely a great media person. So do look her up. Thank you, Andrea.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela, and all of your listeners. I offer them a complimentary half-hour consultation. So just go to my website, Andrea Pass PR, click on the appointments, schedule some time, but in the comments, make sure that you met me through Angela's show.